So today we are going to be just talking a little bit about ways that we work together or run a business together successfully as a married couple. One of our top performing videos on our channel, bless you.
Excuse me, I totally sneezed. Sorry, guys.
Is on this topic. And so we thought, let's kind of just do a spin-off and talk a little bit more about it, maybe go a little bit more in depth or talk about it in a little bit different of a way, I guess you could say, than we have before. Although this channel, generally what we chat about is really everything real estate related, tips for home buyers, home sellers, lessons and things that we've learned from transactions, because there's just so much that happens and so much to take out of it.
The real reverse question is, why wouldn't you want to work with your spouse in real estate specifically, or just in any other business? I mean, there's just so much pros, I would say, that incorporate a family like core to just the way you behave or act around each other, but then how we can operate and bring our family into like the world in a sense, because everybody's in their own little bubble. We're in our boxes. We, at the end of the day, 5 p.m. comes rolling around and we not have to knock on our door, but we get to walk into our home and it's ours. It's our own sanctuary. But for us, in my perspective, is like we get to give what we do, our passions, out to the world, and I get to share that with my wife, my daughter, and whoever else family-wise has been wanting to participate with our business.
It's true. I honestly feel as though it is a dream come true, being able to have this lifestyle and run a business together. And I know we always hear so many negative comments whenever we tell someone, whether they're in our industry or not. I feel like I only ever hear
the majority of people.
How could you ever work with your spouse? Or I would hate my spouse if I work with them, but I just don't think that's...
It doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't have to be that way. Maybe people have a negative perception of, I don't know, like working with their spouse because they haven't really seen it.
Right. Well,
I don't know.
I mean, I'm just on the phone with my brother, actually, and he's not incorporated in our real estate side of business, but he's also a part of my team on the wrestling side, because I am a head high school wrestling coach in our community. And, you know, we share ideas, we bounce off each other, ask him for his opinion, and you know, when I need something out of him, he sends it. And then obviously me being the head, I have the final say and approval. Well, you know, we were butting heads this morning. And, you know, this is new for me because I haven't really gotten to incorporate my brother as being on my team. And, you know, we are both very, you know, driven individuals, competitive individuals, masculine men. And we want things kind of done certain ways. But ultimately, if I'm understanding his disc and his persona and personality, and it's like, if you say no to this and I want it, too bad, I'm gonna do it anyways.
Oh my god!
Which it's like, how do you fix that, or is there a fix to it? How do you communicate with each other rather than just cutting him off and saying, dude, don't come then? You know, like if you don't want to obey or follow the rules for everybody else, then what's the difference here? You know, is it just because you are the high horse? Or?
You guys should take the disc test together.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so if you haven't,
you'd have a great time with
if
me.
You haven't heard of it, I know but
it's a learning and progress. So I'm not saying that to badger or downgrade. But what I'm saying is there's this side of working with your spouse or family member that you just got to learn how each other operates.
Right. And I was just mentioning how, though, I was actually going to mention this later on, the DISC profile test. It's like a personality test. If you're in real estate, you've probably heard about it because it's a big thing that, I don't know, real estate like trainers or coaches say that you should do. I know I was just listening in on a mastermind at our company a couple days ago, and they were talking about the DISC test and how getting to know your personality and the different DISC personality types can even be beneficial just simply when working with your clients. But I think that it's something that's really helpful when working with your spouse. Especially this is something we actually just did recently, and even just knowing like, oh, that makes so much sense, that's why you are like that, or that's why you care more about that than I do. And it kind of makes it easier to give the person grace in that area, but also to, I don't know, just like find a way to work together better, understanding it's like, oh, that's like how their brain's wired. It's not just that they're like just being stubborn or
No, seriously, if you're willing to work and know how other people operate that are definitely different minded than you, then your life is going to be a lot easier, but also you're going to be more of a respectful person. And that's what I'm kind of coming as an influence side to business, is you can influence your audience and how you respect them. Does that make sense?
Explain it a little more.
Okay, so I really feel like people, they're not used to actually being treated fairly or properly, especially if there's disagreement in the moment. I feel like we want to avoid confrontation at all costs at a lot of times, especially in workplace settings. But if you say you're talking to your employer or boss or even friend that you're in business with, and you guys have a disagreement, but you've never been able to respect each other in that moment, all the other moments are great, but then when something happens that is really important maybe to you, and it's just disregarded, what was just said to the partner, and there's no respect in that moment, there's really this problem, I would say, and then there's the hurt, and then you really have to digest the relationship at that point. And so what I'm trying to say is, if we can learn to respect other people by understanding how they operate and function, and that's just taking note physically, emotionally, and what's coming out of people's mouths. So taking a step back and listening, I think, is a really big key that we don't do by a lot. I mean, we do not listen to others. And that's been a really big problem. And I notice this all the time when I'm on listing appointments or buyer consultation appointments, especially, is I just want to sit back, listen to you, because you're hiring me to find you a home, sell your home, and now I need to know how you operate in things. So how do you best communicate? Is it through video? Is it through text, email?
And what's
my
important
word
to
choice,
you.
it's really important.
Yeah, like, are the details important to you? Are the numbers important to you? Or are you just gonna, like, I remember this reminded me, because when I was listening to that our company's mastermind about the DISC profile test, and it was saying how if you're a real estate agent and you're meeting with a client who is a like low C and a high D personality type.
Do you know what a C or a D is? I don't want to put you on the spot. Can you share that with the audience?
Okay. D is the driver. I is the influencer. Okay. C is, I don't remember because I wasn't it.
Passion.
No, it was like the numbers person, like more like this is the way analytical. It is, like analytical. Yes, that type of person. And then S was, all I remember about S is like caring about other people, like thinks about, considers other feelings. Yes. And so for mine, I was and I've done this before years ago, and it was the same thing, but a high D and high I with like very little S and C. And then what was yours again? I know you were high C.
It was C and D.
And I think you had like multiple of them, but our personalities work together well. But what was I saying? Honestly, I don't remember.
I don't know. We were talking about discs.
You asked me a question. I was saying, okay,
because you were saying the disc and what it meant. And I wanted the audience to know what.
Okay, my whole reason you threw.
Sorry,
I forgot what I was saying because you had me like explain this. So my whole reason of saying this, though, I was listening to the mastermind, and it was saying how if you're giving a listing presentation, for example, as a real estate agent to a client, and they're a high D, and you're like going through all these facts and numbers in this big book, like they're gonna be like, get out of my house, like I don't want to do this. And it reminded me of, I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I felt when we had a blind lady. Okay, that sounded bad.
That sounded really bad.
We didn't have a blind lady. She wasn't blind. She could see, but she was blind. She worked for a blind company. We were getting blinds on our windows.
So window blinds. Let's clarify that one.
We had a window blind lady. I'm sure that's not what they're called. I apologize. They have a professional name. But we had a lady who sold like a window blind shutter saleswoman come to our house. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I felt being like a high D. I was like, she wanted so badly to show the whole presentation, but I'm like, I know what I want. I already know exactly what I want. We don't need to look at anything else. Like, let's go. Like, we don't need to waste our time here looking through the stuff I don't want.
This show could have helped her.
Anyway, yeah, I feel like this is now turning into like a disc profile
really
show,
is.
just chatting about this. But we'll get into more things about working with a spouse.
I think we're touching on this because how important it is to know your spouse or family member.
Yeah.
If you don't know them, go through this test. I mean, there's all sorts of apps that you can download on your phone. Yes, they might not be as accurate as what Mariah and I had just went through 2-3 weeks ago.
It was very in-depth.
We've been married 6 years, and I have never done a real disc test with her. And what was cool was on this particular test, it showed like 3 different levels where you're at normally. So say you're alone. This is your true nature. And then it went to, okay, you're with other people. And what are you on a performance base? Are you trying to meet the audience standards? How does your disc change around people?
Or when you're under stress, I think it was. How does it change? Stress. It was really interesting. I would definitely recommend anyone, especially in like the real estate industry, to do this, just to have that knowledge. Because like I said, it helps you understand not only yourself, which is really important to know yourself, but knowing how the people around you work.
And that was the whole point.
And your clients.
Knowing yourself, but how to react to others in certain scenarios and situations.
So do you think, because I know for us, I do think our personality types work well together, because a lot of like my weaknesses are your strengths. Like when you came into the business, you brought a lot more like structure, you brought more discipline. Yes, you're more what's the word? Like you are very good at you like excellence and you want things done right.
I have a high standard.
Yes, a very high standard. And my life motto is done is better than perfect. Like literally words I live by.
Which is great. I love that too.
Yeah.
And that's what's cool about me. I understand.
But that works well together.
Yes.
But if we were both high C's, I think I could see that being a problem, butting heads, because we would both be more I'm not saying you're controlling, but I think the C tends to want to be in that position. And I totally let you, because I'm like, whatever. I don't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be
harder.
And
I think every scenario or group needs a boss in a sense, but as long as that boss isn't a dictator. And that's what's cool about someone that's in a leadership role, understanding how important it is to incorporate and include others, especially on a business functioning event or something. We need the delegated positions to step up and do the work that the boss simply doesn't have time to do, can't do, or just doesn't have interest in doing.
Yeah.
And that's what's really valuable that you and I have together is you are able to do things that simply I don't want to do nor know how to do. Yeah. And I literally think about this often. I'm like, man, I'm so grateful for Mariah. Yes, she's my wife, but we are doing this podcast, for instance. We are doing this marketing online. We are taking on listings. We are driving with out-of-state clients. And it's like stuff I never even thought was real or possible because of the way I grew up, for one. But then ultimately, the textbook that I learned out of was a brick and mortar book. And that was kind of the way it was. Go door knock, hold an open house, send some mail flyers. It's very simple tasks you can do to be successful on the real estate side of things. But ultimately, how can we expand our business and have a more broad, open view to maybe revolutionize our area, our industry, and then ultimately our company? And that's what's really exciting about what's happening with us here.
Yeah, I never thought we could have so much fun, doing what we're doing, working with the clients we get to work with, the way we get to get the clients. Because before we started doing all this video marketing, our clients came from door knocking, cold calling, and not that I actually really did enjoy those things. Call. Yes, he still does sometimes, but we definitely don't have to as much as we did before. That was the main piece of our business at one point in time. And I actually enjoyed cold calling, but it's a lot of work. While I found it enjoyable, it was so much more time. And I just never thought that it was possible to run a business this way. And it's such a blessing. But I had a reason for saying that. I can't remember. Gosh, this is what happens when our show isn't structured.
But this is
good,
it's okay. Because
it's okay.
We're talking about how we work a business. And this is a marriage title.
Where was my thought going? Why can't that really is bothering me now?
Oh no.
I was gonna say something. I was talking about my clients. I love the clients I work with. I love my clients. I don't know.
You're gonna
Anyway,
skip that one. What's this next point we want to get through?
So that was point number 2 is about the disc test, but that was ended up being moved to number 1. So number 2 is, and this also the disc test can help with this next one. And that is find out what is going to be the best thing for you each specifically to do in the season that you're in and stick with that. Don't blend roles. Define your roles is so big. I think we would be wasting time and butting heads at the same time if we were not delegating. Like we both have very, very clear. We know exactly what each of our roles are consistently in our business and we stick with them all the way to the point where this last year I completely stopped. And this was a hard decision for me to make, actually. I wrestled with it for a while because I love working with sellers. I started my business by, like I said, cold calling and trying to get sellers was really my main focus. And so giving listing presentations, like that was just something I really loved and enjoyed. And I kind of just came to a point where I was like, I think that even doing both working with sellers is not in our best interest. I think that I need to stick completely with our relocation buyers and you stick completely with the sellers, and it will be in our best interest to just completely split that off and delegate.
Right.
And so I think that's huge.
Yeah. And even that choice I did have disagreements with, by the way.
You didn't really agree with me
but,
at first. But,
you know, I respect the decision and it is what it is. And we're happier for it, though, marriage-wise and business-wise. So
I'm very like, like my brain is like compartmentalized kind of. And I'm very like, if I'm going to do something, I want to do it really well, but I only feel as though I can do it really well if I'm doing it all the time and often. And listing appointments is so different to working with the relocation clients I work with now, to where if I were going on listing appointments all day, I wouldn't be able to, you know, be like I am at home all the time with my daughter as well. And so although my personality and I like listings, it just doesn't fit the season. And so maybe someday, like if like all our kids are in school someday and I want to go back to listings, then like I can do that. But for now in this season, just having the flexibility of the doing what I do. But
and I mean, when putting together some type of business plan, so identifying your roles, I would say, is like number 1 key point you need to be discussing with your spouse or family member when running an organized business structure or even event. And here's why. It reminds me of my daughter when she has cousins over and she's playing in the backyard and they both want that same toy. Now imagine that same toy being the same task that you and somebody else are doing, and you're fighting over it. And imagine a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old going back and forth, mine, 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 mine. The same way applies when we're in adulthood as well, whether it's outwardly said to the other individual or not. Internally, somebody's saying, mine, my task. So if you're doubling up, there's going to be a competition side even of like, man, mine's better than yours. Like, and then you're going to have to battle that out. And then not only is there a decision to be made, there's time wasted. If you guys are both doing these same exact things, separate yourselves and be a little bit more productive with your time. Right.
I do think the best use of your time is like one person being as much of an expert at one thing as they can and the other one sticking with the next thing and being an expert, because you really can't be an expert at a ton of things. Like you really got to, like, if you want to be like super good, be focused.
Yeah.
Which leads me kind of to the next one, which is don't try to change them if they do things differently, except that you both do things a little differently and move on.
Which I've always had a hard time doing.
Holy cow. It's the C in you.
I have a hard time with change.
It's the C. But I think a big thing, though, that it just reminds me of is how when you first got your real estate license, you would come with me on every listing appointment. Do you remember that? And you would try
to. We did that.
Because I think if you think about it,
maybe I was learning.
You'd never gone to a listing appointment. So, and you're like still in your early 20s, like we were both young still. So it's not like you knew what to do.
Mariah was my mentor.
Well, I wasn't the best mentor.
But that's why I wanted. I think it was to gain more experience.
But it was to come with me and kind of see. And I mean, it didn't take long for you to catch on. You obviously didn't need a whole lot of that. But that was another thing, is like and me did listing appointments very differently. And I think we learned that early on. And I would get so mad when you tried to tell me how to do it differently.
On the car ride home or something?
Yes.
I remember
that. But if what you're doing is working for each of you, it's one thing if like what you're doing is totally not working at all. And obviously there were things I could improve on and like, you could have helped me with as well and vice versa. But if what you're doing is like working for the most part, then just let them do what they're doing and the way that they're doing it. Mm-hmm. Like with listing appointments, I know whenever I would go on them, and this is again back to like the disc profile test, I'm very like, I want to be in and out. Like I'm there to do business. I don't care about your dog. I'm not here to stay for 2 hours and chat. I'm friendly and I'm going to be nice to you and talk to you, but it's like transactional. Like I'm not there to sit for 5 hours and like drink a cup of tea. I'm like, how can we maximize our time and then, do a great job for you? And with you, you're like, you approach it a lot different.
Well, the way I look at it, there's a different outlook. I'm more long-term visual.
Yes.
So these clients turn into friendships. These friendships turn into repeat referral customers.
Yes, which is a different look. A different outlook. Okay.
But I mean, ultimately, every relationship's different and has different variables. Of course, you don't treat everybody that way as a transaction.
Because some of the clients might be like a high D personality and they don't want you there for 2 hours.
Well, they could be your best friend you went to high school with, or somebody you met in the school that you work with in the community. Dude, come on, you need to be a little bit nicer. And that's what I'm saying, the variable, not saying Mariah's not nice.
I get it. I am nice.
You're amazing.
I am nice. Okay.
No, seriously, Mariah has taught me so many good things in this business. And I mean, like she just said, though, I used to go on listing appointments with her in the very beginning, whether that was to educate her or myself. I just really honored my wife. And I think that's a really big step, though, that we haven't touched on when working with your spouse in business, is honoring each other, whether you're wrong or right. There's moments you're going to have blow up fights. This is not all rainbows here, but you need to honor each other and then come back off your past mistakes and say, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to say that type of thing to you again. And that's how you're going to resolve those issues that maybe were happening in the past that you just don't want to go through again, because ultimately that could be brought not to the bedroom, but to the household. Yeah. And you guys live under the same roof at the end of the day, right? You're married usually and you are a unit, and a unit needs to stick together and not be separated. Okay.
Right. No, that's really good. And if there's nothing wrong, like I do think we should use our different strengths, like since we have different strengths and weaknesses, and every couple working together probably will. I think it's a good thing to use those strengths and weaknesses to help each other in maybe areas where they don't see or could improve. But I also think it's how you approach it and how you, I don't know, being, you never want to be critical or come across as like critical. There's always a better way to approach.
Yeah.
I guess you could say.
Mariah hates my arrogance.
Arrogance? What do you mean? I hate your arrogance.
My arrogance.
Oh, because you like if I think you think you're like better than me or something.
Mr. Know-it-all sometimes.
Oh yeah, being like a know-it-all.
Especially if there's a disagreement. I'm like, Mariah, this didn't work. There's a reason why you're getting this type of response from an individual.
That's true. That's true.
Now I come off as Mr. Know-it-all.
That's true. Okay, so another tip for working together, or like lesson we've learned, I guess, working together is another thing we do is we schedule in time to be together that isn't work related. Although sometimes our time to be together, our, date night, if you will, does look like delivering keys to a client together or attending a title company's top client appreciation, dinner, get a free meal and get to hang out and see some other realtors. But for the most part, though, scheduling time, since we are together, and I know not every, real estate team couple is going to look the same way, but for us, we're together quite a bit. So it can kind of feel like we do see each other a lot, but it's also really important to like schedule time where you're like not just together working, but while you're also together, just like having fun or doing something you enjoy.
Yeah, which for me, it's sometimes hard to do. You know, you really got to flick the switch off, whether it's real estate, coaching, relations, or just marriage.
Yeah.
You really have to transition into the next moment that you're living in and delegate that time for that relationship, which for me personally, it's always hard for me to do because I'm a very passionate person. So I care about the things I spend my time in, and whether it's real estate, sports, my marriage, my daughter, it's one of those things where I've always had a struggle with turning certain things off and transitioning to just like maybe the one-on-one section with the other spouse needing.
Right. Which doesn't mean that we don't necessarily have these rules where we're like, well, I do think it's important to like obviously talk about other things. We don't necessarily have these rules where we're like, if we're on a date, we can't talk about work. Like I've heard some people that work together do, because to be honest, it is a shared passion and we both enjoy talking about it and we both enjoy like all the aspects of real estate. And so it just doesn't seem necessary because it's not this thing that's like stressful work. It's what we're talking about. It's like, we're dreaming, like we really genuinely enjoy all of the aspects of it. And I think that is one really cool thing is we get to have this shared passion that I think if you didn't have with your spouse, it would be difficult. You know, you wouldn't understand, you wouldn't really be able to relate, I think, on a lot of levels. I mean, I think I remember even before you had your license, like you didn't quite understand.
I knew nothing about real estate.
When I would talk to you.
A big portion of Mariah, you know?
I don't know. What did you think I did all day? Did you not know, or did you?
Know. I thought, you know, she has a great life. that's really.
Were you jealous of me because
in a way I was like, wow,
like
she's
what you were
at
doing?
home. I
was working
leaving.
from home.
I'm not home.
Yes.
All I want to do is sit on the couch or relax when I am home.
Oh my gosh,
man! But you know, with your spouse, they usually want to do stuff with you, right? So
that's
it
funny.
just.
But turning it off though is true. I think it helps once you have a family. It kind of makes it easy because you kind of have no choice. You can't just like, you know, you have to be really intentional with your time and all of that. But before, obviously, like before we had kids, we both would have probably just, I mean, I feel like I spent all my spare time if I wasn't hanging out with friends, because that's something that I also really care about. If I wasn't doing that, like I would just be working because it's a passion and a hobby. And so, turning it off is another thing. So, okay, the last thing I had was sharing your schedule is really important when you're running a business with your spouse. Obviously, that's really just communication, but the iPhone makes it really easy to just add the person or invite the other person to your calendar. So we do that with pretty much everything, just so we're aware, like, hey, I'm going to have a listing appointment at this time, or have a Zoom call with a client at this time. And that way we can just sync our schedule and our lives, and things are easy and they just flow well.
Yeah, it's not like taking each other's phone and scrolling through the text or looking at each other's locations. It's more just like we need to know actual time frames. For instance, we have our daughter, right? Yeah. So one of us is usually going to be watching her, and if
we're bringing her, if it's whoever has like the thing that's easier to bring her to, like you can very easily bring her to.
So if our schedules aren't synced, though, for instance, we're double booking for one, but then ultimately we're off. There's always this often imbalance that if we're not aware of each other's schedules, we're in the dark. And I'm guessing you guys could agree with me that being in the dark is not fun. I'm afraid of the dark. And you just want to make sure you're on the same page with each other.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that's all we have today. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Whether you are a home buyer, a home seller, or even a fellow real estate agent yourself, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. We do come on here every single week and just chat all things real estate. And also, head over to our channel. We have a handful of playlists that you might find helpful, and we'll see you next week.